Good evening. My name is Matthew Ogdan, and it is my great honor to welcome all of you here to this event tonight, as we gather to mark a very solemn occasion, the death of our President, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, 50 years ago today. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's Requiem Mass was performed as part of a liturgy in memoriam of President Kennedy following his death for his wife and family at Boston's Cathedral of the Holy Cross. Tonight, you will hear members of the Schiller Institute Chorus, joined by an orchestra and soloists specially assembled for the occasion, under the direction of our conductor, John Segerson. I would like to thank especially Nancy Novelli, Director of Music here at St. Mark's, Father Patrick Holroyd, and the entire congregation for the opportunity to hold this special event. Mozart himself died before having the chance to complete this work, his final composition, much in the same way that Kennedy's life was cut short, brought to a sudden and early end before he could complete his work. His work still remains unfulfilled. And it is for this reason that we have decided to honor him tonight with a piece that is altogether fitting, a piece that not only promises that justice shall ultimately prevail, that all that lies hidden shall eventually be revealed, and that no guilty act shall go unpunished, but also that although we must die, life does not end, that mortality is a condition merely of the flesh, not of our spirit. As President Kennedy said, a man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea lives on. Ideas have endurance without death. The resurrection of Kennedy's spirit today is the responsibility of us, the living. The purpose of our concert here tonight is to recommit ourselves to the principles of his presidency, to peace, to progress, and to the imagination of a future that we may give to our posterity, for our nation and for the entire world. We have received some greetings tonight for our concert from around the world. And before introducing our two special guests tonight, who will be giving some opening remarks, I would like to share with you two of these greetings, which I think President Kennedy would have appreciated very much. The first comes from Msgr. Raymond Murray, who is the rector of the Cardinal Memorial Library in Armagh, the ecclesiastical seat of Ireland. And as I'm sure you well know, Kennedy was a proud Irish Catholic whose family had roots stretching back centuries through Irish history. His great-grandfather was forced to emigrate in 1848 to escape the Great Famine. He came to Boston, and just over a century later, his great-grandson was elected President of the United States. As president, John Kennedy traveled back to visit his ancestral homeland in County Wexford, just south of Dublin, and the Irish people remain immensely proud of him today. So Msgr. Murray's greetings are as follows. He says, "It is not just that the shot that rang out and killed John F. Kennedy re-echoes now in the sadness of history, or that those of us alive at that time recall the shocking moment when we heard of his death. His smile of friendship, his eloquence, his earnest plea to each of us to ask ourselves what we can do for our country remain forever. In our global world of increasing fraternity, our calling is to answer his message of kinship. His speech at Wexford spelled out that he is one of the great Irish family. His speech in Berlin emphasized his identity with the rich inheritance of that great city. That is symbolic of humanity's close relationship. Msgr. Murray continues, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Fitzgerald recalls for us Edward Fitzgerald, courageous United Irishman inspired by the American Revolution. John would have been proud of that. And Kennedy. Kennedy is a name that derives from the nephew of Brian Boru, the King of Ireland, in 941 AD. And we Irish are proud that John F. Kennedy, a man of such Gaelic Irish ancestry, came to hold the office of President of the United States. Let us continually repossess his message of fraternal love and peace. Msgr. Raymond Murray, Armagh, Ireland. And our second brief but very important greeting that I wish to read comes from Michael D. Higgins, the President of the Republic of Ireland, which reads as follows. Michael D. Higgins, President of the Republic of Ireland, extends his best wishes for the commemoration concert for the beloved, departed Son of Ireland, United States President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Now, before I introduce our first special guest, I'd like to say that to defray the costs of today's performance, we will be passing around some collection baskets, so please be generous if you can. Also, I would like to ask that you please turn off your cell phones right now, and if you have cough drops or hard candy, unwrap them now, not during the music. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the founder of the Schiller Institute, Mrs. Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who will deliver some opening remarks.
Good evening. I'm highly honored to speak to you on the occasion of the performance of Mozart's Requiem in order to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That murder has turned out to be one of the most tragic events for the course of history, not only for the United States, but for the world. Because of that murder and its cover-up, it has turned hope and a beautiful vision for the future and better condition for all of mankind into despair and a feeling of helplessness. When on the day after the assassination, my English teacher came into the classroom bringing up the murder of the US president, who had been in Berlin only a short time before, several of us students broke out in tears. John F. Kennedy had a profound understanding for the role of great art, being, as he put it, close to the center of a nation's purpose and a test of the quality of a nation's civilization. How different would the world have been and would be today if he had lived and realized his ideas. In the famous speech in 1963 to the graduating class of the American University, only 1 month after the world had narrowly escaped from the possible extinction with the Cuban Missile Crisis, he talked about the possibility of world peace as the most important topic on earth. What kind of peace do I mean, he said. What kind of peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war, not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I'm talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and to build a better life for their children. Not mere peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace for all time. That is the American spirit which the whole world hopes will return. In the same speech, he spoke about those who think that peace is impossible, that war is inevitable, that mankind is doomed, and that we are gripped by forces we can't control. Let us today make the solemn oath that we will end the paradigm of pessimism of the last 50 years, which has passed since his murder, and promise to future generations with his words. We need not accept that view. Our problems are man-made. Therefore, they can be solved by man. And man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again.
Thank you. The next greetings that we have tonight come from former U.S. Congressman Cornelius Gallagher, who represented the state of New Jersey in the House of Representatives from 1958 to 1972. Congressman Gallagher was a close personal friend of President Kennedy's and an equally close political ally. He was the primary sponsor of the Peace Corps Act, on top of being responsible for the creation of the Freedom of Information Act in his capacity as a member of the Congressional Privacy Subcommittee. Congressman Gallagher was so close to President Kennedy that he was asked to accompany the Speaker of the House to the airport on the day that the president was shot to receive the coffin as it arrived back from Dallas. In an interview that he delivered earlier this year, Congressman Gallagher describes seeing Bobby Kennedy pacing, walking alone, crying all by himself as he waited for the plane to come in. He walked over and silently put his arm around Bobby. And he remembers him saying, "I don't know what happened, but I know that old man's hand is in this someplace," referring to J. Edgar Hoover. Gallagher went on in later years, in his continuing courageous career in Congress, to challenge Hoover directly on the issue of government surveillance of American citizens. Congressman Gallagher is now 92 years of age, and he couldn't make the trip down here from New Jersey, but he recorded an audio that he would like us to hear from him now. Directly after the audio, the music will begin.
I'm delighted to participate with you in the Mozart Requiem celebrating the life of President John Kennedy. Just a mention of it seems like yesterday rather than the 50 years that we now commemorate. I was very fortunate in having time to know President Kennedy before he was president, and up until the time when his unfortunate death occurred. He was a wonderful friend. He was a great leader. The question is whether or not he was a great president. Maybe his time was too short to evaluate the greatness of his presidency at this point in history. Certainly he was a great man. Few men in history really are touched with greatness, which we all know to be a combination of many talents: wisdom, courage, knowledge, and purpose and dedication and understanding, and the compassion that he had in abundance. I certainly think that showed early in his life when his boat was crashed into, and he went back saving the lives of his crewmen rather than worrying about his own life. I think that was a sign of the kind of man that he was and grew to be. We live in difficult times now, and of course we lived in difficult times then. They were perilous times, times where power consisted of power in the hands of people of the awesome weapons, the most awesome weapons ever created by man to destroy mankind. Kennedy had a feeling that we had to find ways of peace to live with each other. In a land of plenty, he sought an equal share for the goods for all men, to aid the aged, to care for the ill, to educate the illiterate, to assist the underprivileged, to guarantee the constitutional rights of every citizen, which I might say are seriously under attack today as we develop into this police state that is not based on the hope that Kennedy gave. It's based on fear. It's based on fear and maybe the inability of America to participate in the kind of world that we now find ourselves. And yet, if we look back at President Kennedy, his greatest contribution certainly was providing hope to all of us. We were a generation that came out of the war. Whether you were a private or a five-star general, I think the common thread is that we all had a responsibility toward our country, and when we were needed, we filled that responsibility. I think that was a common thread that ran through America during the days of John Kennedy. And I think he symbolized that. We all looked up to him, whether we agreed with him politically or not. People looked up to him. He represented what the America was that we all hoped it would be, and he was our leader. And I guess that was really the real problem of that occurred upon his death. Suddenly, this vibrant, strong, good-looking, intellectual man, our leader, was struck down in a matter of minutes. I think one of the things that we all shared then was our own mortality. And while he gave us the hope, the commonality of hope for all men, he also, his death dashed our own view of life and the need to participate in life before our own mortality kicked in, as it did so suddenly with Jack Kennedy. We look upon the question of terrorism today, which is certainly a very serious condition in the world. But in those days, we had communism, and we had the Cold War, and the ability to destroy the entire world on a misjudgment by one of the leaders who possessed that power. I think Kennedy's greatest contribution was showing that America would resist, could resist, and the ability to fight back intellectually to prevent such a war. I would really hope that in these days of the war on terror, that we would look at the strength of America and try to find that common thread of our own courage, of our own desire to find a peaceful way out of this war on terror, that the effects of which are devastating to the rights and liberties of every citizen in the United States. Maybe it's time to think of an international gathering to find out what really are the gripes around the world, to see whether or not we cannot bring reason and intellectual reason and intellectual power to zero in on the problem exactly the way that John Kennedy brought together those people in the world, his meeting of Khrushchev, the showing of the ability of America to resist, but also the ability of the United States to find reason to perpetuate the human race on this earth. So as we commemorate, and I want to certainly compliment your group on this Requiem, and as we celebrate the sadness of it all, I think it's time also to think about the good part of America, the good part that was in the days of the hope of John Kennedy, and hope that we can reinstate that hope for the young people in this country, so that the dream of Kennedy of a free United States, the ability to participate in equality for all men and all people, I think is the dream that I believe that we will reawaken as we also pass along our great concern for the death of John Kennedy, a great man, a dear friend, and someone that the American public would like to see stem from his death the beginning of a new way of the American fight for its liberty, its freedom, and for the people in this country of the United States that descended from that sad day in Dallas. So once again, I thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I certainly have great admiration for the great work that you all do, and especially renewing the Day of Hope on the day that we commemorate the death of John Kennedy. And may we all find a way in peace, and the contribution that you are all making certainly is leading the way in that direction.
Oh Time to take longer strides. Time for a great new American enterprise. Time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth. I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I have earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. We propose to accelerate the development of the appropriate lunar spacecraft. We propose to develop alternate liquid and solid fuel boosters, much larger than any now being developed, until certain which is superior. We propose additional funds for other engine development and for unmanned exploration, explorations which are particularly important for one purpose which this nation will never overlook: the survival of the man who first makes this daring flight. Secondly, an additional $23 million, together with $7 million already available, will accelerate development of the rover nuclear rocket. This gives promise of someday providing a means for even more exciting and ambitious exploration of space, perhaps beyond the moon, perhaps to the very end of the solar system itself. This dam will produce enough electric energy, this one dam, to light the city of Edinburgh in Scotland. This dam alone will supply enough irrigation area larger than the nation of Luxembourg. This dam and the rest of the dams on this river, which 30 years ago would have provided only floods and darkness, now provide irrigation and light. And though those of us who are here today follow in the footsteps of those who made it possible, we share a satisfaction and also a commitment that we must in our time make it easy for future presidents of the United States and future citizens in the 1970s and 80s to visit projects like this, which have been planned and carried out in our day. Every member of Congress, everyone in the executive branch, from the president on, in the field of national resources, has to plan during their period of administration or of office for the next generation, because no project that we plan today will be beneficial to us. Anything we begin today is for those who come after us. And just as those who began something years ago make it possible for us to be here, I hope we'll fulfill our responsibility to the next generation that's going to follow us. This demonstrates our confidence in the future. Those people who come here from abroad, what they want to see is the Tennessee Valley. 10 years from now, they'll want to see this project. And I hope in space and on the ground, this country will continue its march forward. Thank you. And the important lesson in all of those projects is that progress isn't being made as a result of a sudden idea suddenly coming into fruition. This project, the Frying Pan, Arkansas, and the project in South Dakota represented 10, 20, and 30 years' effort of devoted citizens. Things do not happen, they are made to happen. And this project is the result, and our action today, of 30 years of men, some of whom have now died, who thought that this dam would help this valley. If you realize what this state and other states like it went through in the 20 years from 1919 to 1939, the depression of the early 20s, the depression of 11 years of the 30s, the stagnation on the farms and in the cities, and then realize how this state has boomed relative to the rest of the nation in the last 5 or 10 years, we realize a good deal of that was due to the wise decisions taken in the 30s, when the framework was laid with great opposition to those who objected for what was being done in Washington, great opposition to the efforts which Franklin Roosevelt and the Congress made in those days. And yet when we look from 1945 to now, almost 20 years, we've had a gradual rising tide of prosperity throughout our entire country. Those two records, that contrast between what we saw then between the wars and what it meant to this state and others like it, and what we've seen since 1945, should make, it seems to me, a deep impression upon those who seek to end a partnership between the national government and this state and others, which develop the resources of the state and improve the life of the people. And those who think it can be left to chance are wrong. It was left to chance for 20 years between the two wars. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. I'm also glad he'd come here today because we begin work on the largest nuclear power reactor for peaceful purposes in the world. And I take the greatest satisfaction in the United States being second to none. And I think this is a good area where we should be first. And we are first. We are first. It's extraordinary how long it took. It's extraordinary what energy, human energy, was required to get this concept accepted. There are 2 points on conservation that have come home to me in the last 2 days. One is the necessity for us to protect what we already have, what nature gave to us, and use it well, not to waste water or land. That is the traditional concept of conservation. But the other part of conservation is the newer part. And that is to use science and technology to achieve significant breakthroughs, as we are doing today, and in that way to conserve the resources, which 10 or 20 or 30 years ago may have been wholly unknown. So we use nuclear power for peaceful purposes and power. We must maintain an aggressive program to use our hydro resources to the fullest. Every drop of water which goes to the ocean without being used for power or used to grow or being made available on the widest possible base is a waste. And I hope that we will do everything we can to make sure that nothing runs to the ocean unused and wasted. And secondly, must hasten the development of low-cost atomic power. I think we should lead the world in this. And by the end of this century, this is going to be a tremendous source. Our experts estimate that half of all electric energy generated in the United States will come from nuclear sources. These are the things we must do and many more. This great rich country of ours has a long unfinished agenda, but it's always had that agenda in creative times. And this is a creative time in our country and throughout the world. All of the trained and educated men and women who are making our country over, who are building a better standard of living for our people, this is a time when we wish to encourage that release of energy, human energy, which is the most extraordinary of all. And therefore, I'm proud to come here across the United States as President to express our thanks to you, to express my pride in what is being begun here today, which puts the United States, as I said, once more in the lead in a whole new area which can mean so much to people around the world. And I think it's very appropriate that we come here where so much has been done to build the military strength of the United States and to find a chance to strike a blow for peace and to find a chance to strike a blow for a better life for our fellow citizens. This is a great national asset here. I can assure you it will be maintained. Man is still the master of his own fate, and I believe that the power of science and the responsibility of science have offered mankind a new opportunity, not only for intellectual growth, but for moral discipline, not only for the acquisition of knowledge, but for the strengthening of our nerve and our will. We are bound to grope for a time as we grapple with problems without precedent in human history. But wisdom is the child of experience. In the years since man unlocked the power stored within the atom, the world has made progress, halting but effective, towards bringing that power under human control. The challenge, in short, may be our salvation. As we begin to master the destructive potentialities of modern science, we move towards a new era in which science can fulfill its creative promise. I recognize with each door that we unlock, we see perhaps 10 doors that we never dreamed existed, and therefore we have to keep working forward. When power leads man towards arrogance, poetry reminds him of his limitations. When power narrows the areas of man's concern, poetry reminds him of the richness and diversity of his existence. When power corrupts, poetry cleanses. For art establishes the basic human truth, which must serve as the touchstone of our judgment. The artist, however faithful to his personal vision of reality, becomes the last champion of the individual mind and sensibility against an intrusive society and an officious state. The great artist is thus a solitary figure. He has, as Frost said, a lover's quarrel with the world. In pursuing his perceptions of reality, he must often sail against the currents of his time. This is not a popular role. If sometimes our great artists have been the most critical of our society, it is because their sensitivity and their concern for justice, which must motivate any true artist, makes him aware that our nation falls short of its highest potential. I see little of more importance to the future of our country and our civilization than full recognition of the place of the artist. The highest duty of the writer, the composer, the artist, is to remain true to himself and to let the chips fall where they may. In serving his vision of the truth, the artist best serves his nation. And the nation which disdains the mission of art invites the fate of having nothing to look backward to with pride and nothing to look forward to with hope.